The Gamasutra Job board is the most diverse, active and established board of its kind for the video game industry. Here is just one of the many positions being advertised right now. Location: Bellevue, Washington. tinyBuild LLC is looking for an experienced game producer to join tinyBuild's publishing team in downtown Bellevue. As a game producer, you will be responsible for working with partners, developers, and stakeholders to guide the life cycle of games upon release. The main focus will be in leading the development process and managing multiple stakeholders internally and externally. The successful candidate will have a hands-on approach, be comfortable working with the team, international partners, time zones, little supervision, and have excellent organizational and communication skills. You will be working in a constantly evolving, chaotic, and exciting environment that adapts to the industry in real time. Key responsibilities: qualifications, benefits, medical, dental, vision, PTO. Salary depends on experience. Interested? Apply now. Whether you are just starting out, looking for something new, or just seeing what's out there, the Gamasutra Job board is the place where game developers move ahead in their careers. Gamasutra's job board is the most diverse, most active, and most established board of its kind in the video game industry, serving companies of all sizes, from indie to AAA. Looking for a new job? Get started here. Are you a recruiter looking for talent? Post jobs here. One thing we never really addressed back when we were making the Bitsquid engine was localization of the tools. We supported localization of Filemenu in the engine, of course, but the engine tools themselves were only available in English, as both the number of tools and the number of frameworks used are the tools, Winforms
WPF HTML.
Grow. The localization task became more daunting. When you are writing an engine, you are never short of stuff to do, and there always seemed to be something more pressing than addressing localization. With machinery, we did not want to make the same sharp distinction between tools and games, as we envision lots of use cases where the creative experience is taken all the way to the end user. So it was important to get this right from the start. Localization, in the context of game development, can mean many different things. Localization of strings in the GUI is probably what first comes to mind, but language can also be found in dialogue audio files and text baked into textures. Finally, there can be legal and cultural issues. For example, localization to Germany requires removing blood and gore. Plot or animation changes might also be necessary in the Bitsquid engine. All these things were all handled in the same generalized localization framework. Everything was a resource: string resource, audio resource, texture resource, script resource, and we could localize these resources for different targets. Treating everything the same has the advantage of being conceptually simple, but it also has disadvantages. Data-oriented design tells us to look at the data, and the data, for these different cases, looks completely different. The GUI text typically only amounts to a couple of KB for an entire game, whereas the audio dialogue can easily end up in the GB range. Solutions that work well in one case might not work well for the other. For example, we can easily keep the GUI text for all the supported languages permanently in memory and provide instant switching between different languages. For dialogue sounds, on the other hand, switching language might require loading and loading megabytes of data, a significantly slower and more complicated procedure. If we force everything in under the same Localization abstraction. We might force the DOV text localization to become as slow and complicated as the other kinds of localization, even though that is completely unnecessary. So in a machinery, we treat these as separate problems, and do not try to solve them all using the same mechanism. In this article, I will only look at the specific problem of localizing DOV text. The machinery uses an immediate mode gate approach, IMGUI, where the DOV is built in code rather than in a editor. The advantages and disadvantages of this could be the topic of a whole another post. What it means, though, is that since all the DOV text is in the C code, what we need for localization is a way of localizing strings in C code. We need a function that, given some kick that identifies a string in the DOV, returns a translation of that string in the user's currently selected interface language. Localize key text. In a machinery, this function is actually implemented as a macrotmlocalizeq, so I will use capital letters to refer to it from now on. I will go into details on HOWTMLOCALIZES implemented later. But for now, just think of it as having some kind of table that provides the interface text for each key in all the supported languages and using Takato dual lookup in that table. So far, I have been deliberately vague about what fact that we use to index into this table actually is. One common option is to use an integer identifier for thick and have a big header file that enumerates all the possible key values, something like this. However, I find that this approach has a number of problems. It is a little bit painful to go in and edit this header file, every string in the DOV, and the header can get pretty large. The mechanism is built as a collection of DLLs. To use this approach, we would have to make sure that the is did not collide across DLLs. For example, by giving each DLL a unique numerical prefix for its. But we also need a mechanism to ensure that these prefixes never collide. Sequential numbering like this tends to cause a lot of merge conflicts. In version control tools, any programmer who wants to add nooks needs to put them at the end of the list where they will conflict with nooks from other programmers as soon as they merge. Is that are no longer used will still remain in the index as ghosts or holes, unless you reuse them for new strings. But then you have the problem that they is now have different meanings, depending on the version of the software. Because it is a little bit painful to create nooks, there is a temptation to keep it, even if you change the DOV text. For example, suppose you have a tool in your UI for moving objects around called Relocate. So you create a key Relocate and associate it with the string, i.e. locate. Later, you decide it is simpler and better to just call the tool move. It is tempting to do this by just changing the text in the translation table and leaving the identifier as it is. But then you end up with a somewhat confusing situation, where relocate actually refers to the string move rather than relocate. What can we do instead? Whenever we need unique identifiers but sequential enumeration is problematic, hashing is a good approach. So instead of, we could do, this gets rid of several of the pain points. We do not need the big header file enumerating all these. There is no risk of collision if we hash into a big enough key space. And we do not have any ghosts or holes anymore, since we do not have the big list anymore. Is not hashing expensive compared to using a sequential it? True, hashing has an extra cost. But in this case, it does not really matter. In an IMGUI, you should only be drawing the things that end upon the screen. You can always do a quick rect intersection test to determine if your control is visible. If we assume that the hash is only code for things that are actually joined, the cost does not really matter, because it will be dwarfed by the cost of drawing the glyphs on the screen. We can make the macro look a bit nicer too. We do not really need THGTMSTRINGIDPREFIX anymore, since these are no longer global defines that need to be unique, but just ordinary strings. And we can bake in the call to hash into that localise macro itself, leaving us with. There is still something I do not like about this though. Every time we want to add a new string to DOV, we have to come up with a new identifier name for it. And naming is one of the two hard things in computer science. It is easy enough for things like THEFILEMENU. But what about a string like number of rendered triangles, D?